The country seems to be divided on whether President Cyril Ramaphosa should in fact resign. In fact, the debate has now evolved and now has involved the terminology that's being used in this report by an independent panel that was looking, of course, into the Phala Phala farm robbery. Those in support of the president are arguing that the three-member team's report is actually not clear enough. In fact, the words such as may and prima facie have also been scrutinized and are being interpreted differently. So let's get you one perspective now, bring in the former head of the SIU's domestic branch, current ambassador to South Sudan, that's Advocate Mahlodi Muofhe, who joins us via our video link from Juba this morning. Great to have you on the program, sir. Thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. I guess as we try and make sense of the different sentiments around this report, it's important for us to remind each other of what the panel was actually tasked with doing, right? Essentially, they were meant to find out whether the president has a case to answer, and the thrust of their response was, well, maybe he does. I wonder to what extent you reckon this kind of ambivalence is why there's so much of a divide around even just the credibility of this report, not just among ordinary South Africans, but among even some of the most respected legal minds.
Well, the terms of reference really were a little vague. In that Parliament outsourced its duties to that committee, which didn't even have any rights to subpoena anybody. But on the issue of the prima facie evidence, for example, I mean, that is usually used in criminal trials. Now, the panel itself cannot say that it can come to that conclusion that the president has a prima facie case to answer, for example, because what it is seized with incomplete documents. It is seized with documents, all of them, including the president's statement. They are all hearsay. You see, he who alleges, and that's Arthur Fraser, he himself does not have any evidence. He relied on hearsay. So there's no question of any prima facie case arising out of this situation. I think it was an unfortunate thing. I mean, with hindsight, I mean, if I were a member of that committee, I would have basically gone back to the Honorable Speaker of Parliament and said, Madam Speaker, with the documents that you have given us here, some of those documents are said to have been unsigned. There is no way in which we can come to any conclusive conclusion which says the president has a case to answer. Let me also just say that, by the way, the Constitution is very much peremptory in terms of saying which are the conditions which the president can be impeached. Now, peremptory implies that, the proof, it is so burdensome. You have to prove that beyond reasonable doubt, which is a proof that the state, in fact, will have even in this case, because the accuser who opened up this case does not have any evidence. That's what makes it so difficult, because even the investigators, I suppose if I was an investigator, I would have said to Arthur Fraser, please give me evidence which will make it possible for me to basically go to the prosecution. But there isn't anything. Arthur Fraser comes up with hearsay stories to the police. He himself says he doesn't know. He was told. Now, there's no ways in which we can run our criminal justice system or, in fact, make sure that we develop our constitutional law in the manner in which this matter has been handled.
That's interesting. I mean, you speak, for instance, about prosecution. And I think it's important for us, once again, to go back to what this particular panel was meant to do. I mean, they won't necessarily take into account any prospects of prosecution. At the heart of it, it was around whether or not there may be a chance that the president may have flouted the law, so to speak. And again, as we mull over that primary mandate, for lack of a better term, I wonder whether it's worth actually revisiting what prima facie even means. A quick Google search suggests that it's evidence that's based on the first impression, accepted as correct until proven otherwise. I wonder whether they passed that test.
There's no ways in which that panel could have found anything, because the documents it was seized with, all of them are hearsay. Now, it's hearsay upon hearsay upon hearsay. I cannot fathom how that panel could have actually come to this conclusion, really. In my view, I think taxpayers' money could have been saved.
Sure. So how then should we have approached this particular issue? Because the President certainly had questions hovering around his name, and in many instances, Parliament itself was facing pressure because in the past, there'd been accusations, even at commissions like the State Capture Inquiry, of not doing enough to hold the executive accountable.
Well, the President, because he's the tallest tree, in this game, he'll catch all sorts of wins. The reality is that the accusers or the accuser bears the onus to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the President has committed any offense for that matter. In this instance, it's like we are saying the President has got to prove his innocence before any court of law having pronounced on it.
Well, apologies for interrupting you there. To be fair, the President himself admitted that there was a robbery at his farm in Phala Phala. He did speak about there being money stolen, even though he contested how much it was. And on the face of it, it doesn't seem like he had pushed back that it was actually foreign currency in cash that was at his house. Now, on the basis of just those facts, surely the President too, at least there's an expectation that he give a bit more details around exactly what happened.
Yes, even then, we all know as South Africans that the President was not in the country at the time when that offense was committed. So, in effect, the President is basically basing his submission on hearsay. So, I mean, who must stand before the court as accused number one, for example? Because we all know as South Africans that he was not there. So, whatever he's saying, he was told.
Well, but This was at his farm. Whether he was there or not, some people might argue is immaterial. Given he's standing, you've mentioned him as the tallest tree in the land, so to speak, there's a great expectation that he's on top of something like this, and at the very least has been able to do what is expected procedurally, if in fact a crime like that took place, even in his absence.
Now, unfortunately, that's not even how the law operates. Even in your case, I mean, if something happens in your house when you are now in the studio, I mean, there's no ways in which you can go and depose an A1 statement there, especially if there are people, witnesses in the house who saw an offense taking place. Those are the people who must actually say, this is how this offense was committed. So it is an unfortunate thing that because he's the tallest tree in the game, then the onus is shifted to him. That's unconstitutional by all means. I've always said that let's allow the rule of law to prevail, because this will come to haunt us one day. We cannot use different standards. Even if that is the case, in terms of the Constitution, I mean, it's an onerous thing to get to a president getting impeached in Parliament to prove. Now, you cannot even, the panels, I don't know which test were they using, beyond reasonable test, they can't use even the balance of probabilities, in my view, they can't even use it because they were not seized with all the documents. I mean, they didn't have the right even to subpoena witnesses there. Now, Parliament itself has the right to subpoena witnesses, for example, if it so wishes. I mean, so in the first place, the whole matter should have been dealt by Parliament, setting up an ad hoc committee following parliamentary rules, and they go to the House and vote if they need an ad hoc committee or so. I think that's where this matter should have ended. Not even taking it beyond a panel. I mean, we're spending money unnecessarily as South Africans.
That's interesting. I want to make sure that I don't misquote you. Are you saying, hypothetically speaking, that if there were, for instance, a burglary at my own property and they found there a stash of unregistered firearms and I happen not to be in the house, that I don't have a case to answer?
I am saying whoever was in the farm at that point in time is the person who is supposed to depose to any statement, because that person has got first-hand information as to what happened. evidence. Now, the accuser himself, the statement he makes is based on hearsay. So we're basically moving on a trajectory of hearsay upon hearsay upon hearsay upon hearsay. So I'm not saying that the president, honestly, in this case, doesn't have anything to say, but genuinely, and I think we should really credit him for allowing all the institutions of government tasked to execute their task to do their task. Because in this case, it's a criminal case opened. Now, if a criminal case is opened, it's only the police, the Hawks, and the NPA who must constitutionally deal with the matter. Now, we are all running around on hearsay evidence, even those who submitted their submissions. I thought perhaps this committee would have had some documents better than what was in the public domain. But on its own admission, this committee said, no, it didn't have all documents it needed. It didn't have the powers. It basically worked with limited documentation before it. So by its own admission, what happens with the balance of the documents it needed, for example? So how do you then come to any conclusion other than saying to Madam Speaker, with the information that you have given us, unfortunately we cannot make a determination. Let's leave those who are tasked to investigate this matter, the Hawks, the police, to work, and then only the NPA can then make a determination. What if it goes this way and the NPA decides otherwise? Just say it is not prosecuting, because, I mean, the NPA will have to look at, whether it can reach the threshold of at least proving its case beyond reasonable doubt. In this case, it is Arthur Fraser, who himself says he doesn't know exactly. This is very unprofessional.
Very interesting take indeed. From what I've heard, Arthur Fraser claims to have evidence, but to your point, none of it has been made public, at least from what we've been able to see. And the report itself, the panel itself, admits that if these allegations are to be believed, at some stage Arthur Fraser is going to even have to tell the public the source of that information itself, or at least tell authorities who are investigating this matter. Advocate Mahlodi Muofhe, that's the time we have this morning. Thanks very much indeed for your take on this incredibly important story. Really do appreciate it. Advocate Mahlodi Muofhe, obviously the former SIU manager and now the ambassador, I beg your pardon, to South Sudan, left us there from the city of Juba.